I thought, like, just in terms of, like, tone and, like, presence, like, that felt really good and comfortable, and, like, the fact that it's a role play, it actually feels like an authentic conversation right now, so that felt good to me. One of, like, the big flags that, like, I kind of caught in this conversation, and my guess is that the reason that you chose to focus on math is because we have our math data here, and, like, we can use that in this conversation. But I think it's really, like, what I wasn't getting in this conversation, and, like, a point that, like, I would really focus on is thinking about, like, why is she not giving the DRA right now? Like, why hasn't she gotten through it? Is that, like, is there something there that, like, I'm totally missing because, like, the data's not present?
Can I just, like, because I think there's a lot of things that we're missing, like the things that we role play bar things right now. Like, I already have a plan with her for DRA.
Yeah.
And she's almost done, like, that, and I think, like, maybe because the role play I'm having now has been a section of, like, 3 conversations, right? Her and I meet weekly, so I think that's right.
And I don't think it's, like, about, like, the backstory or anything, and, like, but I do think that, like, just because we don't have student level data on a subject, or because, like, she hasn't finished doing the DRA, or they haven't, maybe it's a math teacher and they haven't tracked their most recent math unit test, like, I think that, like, we need to be really careful about, like, those flags that are coming up as to, like, why things haven't done them, and, like, I guess, like, what I would have wanted to hear is, like, a clearer explanation of why you decided to prioritize math, not just because we have the data.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think ideally in a conversation, if you don't know why you're making the prioritization decision to focus on one aspect of data versus another, you need to find that out before you move forward in the conversation. But I also think you need to, if you know that you're going to focus on one specific area, you need to be able to table the other things in a way that's going to allow you to come back to it. So for some of you who may have core members who have multiple content, and you know you're focusing on one content or grade level or whatever, like, you still need to be able to make a prioritization choice sometimes. But you also need to have a way to follow up and make sure that the core member is still going to either apply the lessons that you're going to learn in this conversation for the other content or other subjects or whatever, and you need to have a way to follow up to make sure that that lesson is going to be applied.
The other thing I'm like, and this is, like, so nitpicky, I'm sorry, but, like, the other thing I would just say is, like, this is a learning experience for core members too. And the only way that core members are going to learn how to do this on their own or to replicate this is to be really transparent about your thinking. And so, like, if you made that prioritization choice, which is awesome, fine, whatever, like, you going into it, I think sometimes we need to be clear with our core members about why we're making that choice, not just because that's the lesson I observed today. Like, I think we need to, like, do a think aloud and, like, share our thinking with core members about why we're making those choices so that they can then go back and replicate that. Sorry,
I think these are very important points. I think these are important points, and I want to make sure other folks have who have additional thoughts about, like, what we saw specifically related to where, and maybe you didn't see enough yet, but where in the framing of this part of the conversation are we starting to see the groundwork laid for a meaningful interaction with this core member and their data?
Well, I think rooting it in the vision, you know, that's always, like, easiest to me. It's just to get to the root of, like, what do you want from your students? It's a great way to set up the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's right, Lauren, and to be specific, like, one of the things I want to come back to, and hopefully you all will see me come back to when we do the last part of the conversation, is, like, she talked a lot about ownership, she talked a lot about problem-solving stuff that was important to her, she talked a lot about, like, alignment between her plans and assessments. When I get into specific student-level stuff, I need to be connecting those things back to, like, ownership or, you know, problem-solving things that she said were important to her. Because these are the things that come out of her vision. And so I think if you're not seeing me make those connections later down the road, then that should be a flag for the group. Yeah, so I think rooting it in a vision is very helpful. Other thoughts?
I thought you were already starting to do that because you were starting to use her language, like, as you were talking the entire time. And you always said we, and, you know, the students, you never said, like, you or me. Was always about, like, your goal. And I didn't know the backstory behind the DRA or whatever, but I thought you did, like, a good job of, like, focusing in on the conversation. I think a lot of times when I had my first conversations, I wanted to touch everything, but ended up touching nothing. But like for you to say like, you know, like maybe you emailed her beforehand, like these are things we're gonna talk about, here's why, compared with this, I know we're gonna talk about DRA at a different date, you know, it just seemed like you already had a plan before the plan, and you were creating like a plan as you were going as well. So I guess just that level of like thought when you go into a conversation with that was great.
Okay, so let's finish up this part of the conversation, and then we'll talk whole group, and then we'll break split into our separate groups.